I was working stupid hours a lot of the time. I didn't have time to do very much else. Whereas now, obviously my work is still important to me, but it's more of a natural expression of who I am. It's not something I'm forcing myself to do at a particular time. I believe it's really important to have a vision. My vision is about helping humanity towards its highest potential. Also by helping people to connect with their values, which, like I say, I think those are really the key to success, not in just the traditional materialistic sense of success, but in the actual inner truth of success and peace and happiness. And I believe that the more people can do that, that's going to have a ripple effect, and that can potentially change the world. Hey guys, it's Dean from I&I Insight, and welcome to another episode of I&I Interviews. In this episode, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, as I&I are actually going to be in the hot seat answering questions from none other than my wife Kim, exploring my background and how I got on this journey following my vision and values as an independent researcher and business coach at I&I Insight. I hope you enjoy this interview.
Hey Dee.
Hey Kimbo.
How the roles have changed.
Indeed. What a role reversal.
Welcome to I&I Insight and welcome to I&I Insight on Intuition. It's not like it. Welcome to I&I Insight and Interviews. Is that right?
I'll do the introduction after.
Right.
I want to do that bit.
I&I Interviews.
Okay. Welcome to I&I Interviews. I will be interviewing you today, which I am very honoured to do so. So the first question I'd like to ask is just a little bit. Actually, before I say this, because you have to do a lot of quiz for this video.
I'm crying already.
So yeah, I'm very honoured to be able to interview you. I feel like you have such a beautiful mind and you're such a beautiful person. And so to be able to show your audience who you are and to be able to tell them a little bit about who you are, I think would inspire those who are watching.
Oh, thank you very much, Kimbo. It's nice to hear that. And yeah, I'm really excited to be interviewed by you. No one else I'd rather be interviewed by, as obviously you know me better than anybody else, and hopefully you can crack open this tough exterior and get the goodness out today for the audience to see.
I'd love to. So the first question I'd like to ask is just a little bit about your childhood and your family growing up, and what potentially inspired you to be the man you are today.
Great. So my childhood was, I would say, interesting in a way. Less than ideal, maybe, in some ways. I think that everybody kind of, up to a certain age at least, I feel like people always tend to think that their childhood is normal because it's their experience, it's the only life experience that they have up to a certain point. When you start to kind of grow older and open your mind and broaden your horizons and compare yourself to other people. So while I was in it, it felt fine. But then looking back, I realised that it was probably quite difficult and probably led to some impacts on myself and my life later on. But essentially, I grew up in Stockport in Greater Manchester, in a relatively working class area, and I lived with my mum and dad and my sister who's 3 years older than me, most of my childhood, up until my mum and dad separated when I was 8 years old. The reason behind that really was due to my dad's alcoholism. My dad was an alcoholic, and that obviously led to troubles, difficulties with work, money, and my mum, his relationship with my mum. So my mum and dad separated when I was 8 years old. But my dad was also a complex character. He was very funny, very intelligent, but he was also depressed, and that was what led to his alcoholism. But he was also quite psychologically manipulative, which is where some of the problems came for my mum, that she had to kind of escape from. And he actually kind of primed myself and my sister, maybe brainwashed you could say, so that when he knew that a potential breakup was on the cards, he kind of primed us so that when my mum and dad were to separate, that we would want to stay with him, which is what we did. So yeah, my mum and dad separated when I was 8 years old, and myself and my sister decided to stay with my dad. So we stayed with my dad. I stayed with my dad for the next 5 years, from ages 8 to 13, and lived in poverty, living on benefits, poor health, poor food, poor diet, poor hygiene, just a poor lifestyle in every sense really, which was unfortunately all that my dad was able or willing to provide at that time, due to his own mental health condition and the way that he was living his life. So that, like I say, it felt kind of normal up until probably 11, 12, going to high school, starting to see other friends' houses after school, seeing the way that they were living, and starting to see the difference between what a functional household looks like, with working parents and the bills paid and a clean house and so on, compared to the way that I was living with my dad. And then there was a lot of conflict, especially between my dad and my sister, a lot of arguments and just a lot of negativity that I was surrounded by during those years. And I kind of started to grow up and started to see that this wasn't right, and started to see holes in my dad that I hadn't previously seen. Kind of started wising up to his acts and outgrowing him in a way. And so when I was 13, I actually decided to leave my dad and go and live with my mum. I had been seeing my mum occasionally, on and off, through those years, but inconsistently. But at that age of 13, actually my 13th birthday, me and my dad had a row, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go and live with my mum now. And he said, oh yeah, sure, whatever, I'll see you back soon. But I never came back, and that was a big step for me. I think that was probably the first step in my life where I took myself out of a negative situation to try to improve myself, improve my life. Not necessarily knowing so much about what I was doing in that at the time, but just sensed that that was something that I needed to do. And that really was the start of the rest of my life, and everything started to kind of look up from there, really. And I developed a better relationship with my mum, still have a good relationship with my mum now. Kind of learned from her what it was like to be a functioning adult, that I didn't learn earlier from my dad. But yeah, that year from the age of 13 when I left actually turned out to be the last year of my dad's life, as he died due to his alcoholism, which caused liver failure. When I was 14 years old, he died at the age of 44. So yeah, I suppose all of that probably was quite traumatic. Like I say, I think I probably dealt with it as best as I could at the time. I think school and education was actually kind of a refuge for me, and something that I got a lot of positive from, which we'll probably go on to in a moment. But yeah, those were some challenging times in my childhood. And yeah, I think we'll leave it there for now.
No, yeah, that's great. Yeah, just talking about obviously your childhood and your family, and how it's kind of inspired you to become who you are today. And obviously there's a lot of challenges that you went through as you were younger, and as you said, it it helped you realize what was good for you, like moving out of your dad's situation and knowing that with your mum it was a more positive environment. So moving on to school and education then, what was that like for you? And I know with your big brain of yours that you probably had some positive experiences, but yeah, I'd like to hear.
So yeah, I actually really enjoyed school for the most part. Definitely primary school. I was naturally a bright kid, I suppose, and it came quite natural to me. I really engaged with school. I really loved learning. For me as a young kid especially, it was great. You go and hang out with a bunch of other kids, you get to learn stuff, you get to play stuff, and I really connected with it and engaged with school, and did well in school from a young age. And I think I really enjoyed learning, and it was an environment in which I could excel. I was quite naturally adept at most of the things that I was doing at school. So it was an area where I could feel confidence, I could feel enjoyment, and probably something which, like I say, was maybe a little bit of a sanctuary, an escape from maybe some of the unhappiness that was going on in my home and in my family life. School was a place where I felt safe, I felt confident, I felt capable. And yeah, that continued really throughout most of my education. I think in high school, it probably became a little bit more complex than in primary school. Obviously, you've got teenagers being teenagers. It can be a little bit rough socially at times. I think my confidence was also negatively impacted during those years when I was living with my dad, because my health wasn't so good. I was overweight and so on. I wasn't in the best condition, and I had things that teenagers would pick on, kind of thing. I never got picked on really badly or anything. I always had friends, but little jabs, little judgments that come out at school probably dented my confidence at that time, and probably just realizing that my dad wasn't up to much at that time. I think as boys especially, I think a lot of boys have that kind of sense of pride, or they put their dad on a pedestal, and they my dad's better than your dad, my dad's harder than your dad, and all of that stuff. I think during my teenage years I realised my dad wasn't really up to much. That probably dented my confidence as well. But still, I did enjoy school and continue to do well at school. Did really well in my GCSEs, went on to college, and then went to university as well. And like I say, I enjoyed pretty much all of that. And I think during school years, it was pretty much all positive in terms of the engagement with the academia itself. I think at university, that's when I probably started to develop more of a critical perspective, I would say, towards education. I started to recognise that, maybe the education system doesn't always teach everybody the best way that it possibly could. I was quite fortunate in high school and primary school and high school that I was quite academically capable. But looking back, I can sympathise with people who weren't so much, and I think that my attraction to learning was what kind of drove me forward. But sometimes the methods of teaching and the value of the learning isn't necessarily presented so well and isn't so catered for different people. And then at university, I studied psychology, and I was quite surprised to see, from my perspective at least, how you could actually get a degree in psychology without really having to think too critically. I thought, obviously at university you do these kinds of essays where you have to make an argument and explain the pros and cons of different psychological theories and perspectives and so on. But I think that you were still, at least in my experience, almost still expected to recite the same pros and cons and arguments that they fed you, and come up to the same conclusions. So I feel like it was almost a pretense of learning how to critically think without really critically thinking. It was almost learning the pros and cons of different debates. And I found that I started to kind of go a little bit outside the box, certainly towards my last year or two of university, when I started to become more of a critical thinker and start to challenge some of the concepts and theories in a little bit more of a broader way. And I found that wasn't necessarily received as well in terms of the marks and so on. That was kind of a knowing risk that I took at the time, and I didn't mind. I still got a good degree out of it. But yeah, it kind of left me feeling that, I think that education or what you get from it is very much down to the individual. I think it's down to the individual to find out, what drives them and what motivates them and what they're interested in. And if you can do that, then you can be successful. If you're not sure of that, it can be easy to get lost or just kind of go along with it. And, you can get your qualifications and then you think, oh, well, what have I actually really gained from this? And obviously we see that there's been a case of kind of academic inflation in the world over the last couple of decades, that, everybody's got a degree now, and you come out of university with debt and you think, what did I really get out of this? So I did get things out of university as well, but I think those were more on the personal side. Some of the more personal exploration and discussions I was having with my friends that kind of opened my mind and helped me to look at the world in a different way. So yeah, education provided access to information, an environment in which to learn, but it was still very much driven by myself, I feel. So yeah, I think there's improvements that could be made in that regard.
So knowing what you know now, would you do anything different?
If I was to do something different in my education?
Yeah.
So I think what I would probably do more at university is to spend more time developing broader skills beyond the academic subject itself, maybe getting more work experience, networking, connecting with people. That's probably something that I undervalued at the time, and I've since learned more the value of people, not in a exploitative way, but in the sense that, connections and who you know are really important. And I think that I neglected that at university. I kind of stayed with a small circle of friends, which was great, and I gained a lot from them. But maybe it would have been better to kind of get out of my comfort zone a little bit more, and connect with other people. So that's probably something I would recommend to young people, is to really develop more of a network, and connect with people in more ways and get practice doing so at an early age.
Mm-hmm. And would you have gone to university, or would you advise students or young people nowadays to go to university, dependent obviously on your personal experience?
So this is maybe a little bit controversial, because I've done a lot of work in the higher education sector and work with clients that are in the higher education sector as well. It's not something that I would necessarily recommend for everybody. I think that if you've got a clear vision of what you want to do, or you want to pursue a subject that you really need to go to university to pursue and get the qualifications, then I would, say to do so. If you're not sure what to do, if you're doing a subject that you don't really know where it's going to lead to, I would say maybe hold back on going to university, because it is a big investment in time and money, and you don't necessarily get a return from investment from that straight away. And really, you've got to do the personal work. That's the most critical thing, to develop your own critical thinking skills, to develop your own sense of your own ambition, your own values. That's really what's going to determine your success. I think that a lot of the information that you could learn at university, you could learn online or at a library. You can access books online. There's so many courses on the internet that you can get much cheaper. I would say maybe take your time. If you're coming out of college at 17, 18, 19, thinking about going to university, like I say, if you've definitely got a clear vision and there's a specific subject and career pathway that you need to go to university for, then go for it. If you're not so sure, I would say maybe hang back a little bit, maybe study in your own time, maybe do smaller courses, shorter courses, maybe get some work experience and develop yourself a little bit more before you know what you're going to do, before you commit to, spending thousands and thousands of pounds at university.
Great advice. So just moving on to what you spoke about, you were working with higher education. So let's talk about your career and your working life. And yeah, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like I say, I studied psychology as my degree at university. I then did a master's degree at the same university in psychology of advertising, which was a bit of an interesting subject. I think it was a new course at the time at the university. And the reason I got into that was, obviously, I studied psychology. I really enjoyed psychology as a subject matter. I do tend to kind of think about people and the world from a psychological perspective, but I didn't want to be a psychologist. And I got to the end of my kind of university undergraduate course and realised that I didn't necessarily have anything to kind of set myself apart from anybody else who was doing the same course as me. So I thought, now I've kind of got a clearer sense of who I am and my approach to things. I decided to do a master's degree for an extra year. And I'd become interested in marketing and business a little bit more from one of my best friends who was studying those courses at undergrad, who shared some content with me. And the idea there really was just to give myself a little bit more of an employability and a bit of a commercial kind of angle to what I was doing. So yeah, studying that psychology of advertising got me more interested in marketing and advertising, which then led me into a work placement at a market research agency where I was doing market research in a small agency at the time, and that started off just as an initial short-term placement as I was finishing my master's degree, which I did well in, and that became a full-time job, and then I ended up staying in that job for 6 years, doing quite well for myself and getting a couple of promotions along the way within this small market research agency, which actually got taken over by a bigger corporation midway through that time, so it became a little bit more corporate. But yeah, essentially doing market research and insight, which is kind of what I've continued to do throughout my career. In that first job, it was focused on customer experience, customer satisfaction and things like this. And it was a lot of financial clients that we were working with, banks and building societies and so on, as well as retail, travel, utilities, a range of different sectors really. And I enjoyed the work in and of itself. I enjoyed the process of designing and carrying out and analysing and reporting research, which I still do today and still enjoy. But the actual substance, the meaning of the work, was something that really didn't inspire me. It was all very much about driving KPIs, improving satisfaction from 85% to 89% this month, and really just trying to drive customer footfall and profit for those businesses. It seemed to be very financially motivated, and that didn't really inspire me. The brands that I was working with didn't really inspire me. So I always wanted to do something more, something that was more beneficial to others. But yeah, I ended up staying in that job for 6 years due to kind of other things that were going on in my personal life, which kind of meant that it was useful for me to stay in for that amount of time. But then towards the end of that time, when I met you and became vegan and became interested in raw vegan food, we then decided to leave our day jobs, and I quit that job of 6 years to go and start the Happy Caterpillar, which was our raw vegan brand, where we toured around the country in our camper van, selling raw vegan food, vegan fairs and pop-up events around the country, which was a lot of fun, and that really got me out of my comfort zone, totally different to what I was doing before. And yeah, it was quite an adventure, and quite a growth experience as well. Um, and then we also went to Vietnam and taught English for 9 months in Vietnam before COVID cut that short. And then after that, well, actually, prior to COVID, prior to going to Vietnam, I started a job in another small research agency, which I then came back to after Vietnam, which was using a lot of the same skills, a lot of the same research methods that I've become familiar and adept at, but it was in the education sector. So it was working with young people instead of the financially driven work that I was doing before. It was to do with helping young people to progress in their education, to achieve their goals. Like I say, a lot of it was geared towards higher education, university, which may or may not necessarily be the solution for everybody, but it was definitely much more positive and meaningful and contributing to what I saw as positive impacts on young people. And I worked really hard. I worked my ass off really for those few years. I didn't really do too much in terms of hobbies or family time, or probably spending enough quality time with you, because I was really focused on my work. But ultimately I realised, this isn't going to work because we're going down different paths now and I can't necessarily be my full authentic self. And it was at that point that I realised, I needed to go out, I needed to go solo, and started to think up what became I&I Insight.
Amazing. It takes so much bravery to be able to just get out of something like this and to move forward and create something that you have done with I&I. So what does I&I mean, or what does it stand for?
So I&I means a lot to me, which I'll try to explain. So when I was deciding to go solo and wanted to create a brand that represented me, I started to think about what are my main qualities, my main skills, what is it that I'm really trying to offer to the world. And the first one that stood out was insight. That is my speciality. That's what I've always done in my working life, and that's what I think my kind of main skill is, even since a child. Insight to me is about collecting information, processing information, and presenting that information in new and interesting ways to help people in a particular goal. That's something that I've always done and always enjoyed. So I was playing with different names and thinking of different ways to describe this insight and what made it different. And then I was speaking to you actually at the time about these ideas. And then I realised another key strength of mine is intuition. Intuition being an ability to kind of look beneath the surface of things and sense the deeper meaning of things, and following my heart as well, to make difficult decisions at times, like in that workplace, and in previous jobs where I've made difficult decisions at times. And even as a child, maybe that first decision to leave my dad was my intuition telling me to go in a particular direction. So insight and intuition stands for I&I, or I&I stands for insight and intuition. And that really resonated with me as soon as that idea came to mind, because I&I also represents the Rasta idea of I&I, as in we are one being, we are one. We are not just me and you, but we are I and I. And also we are the small I, the ego, the individual, but we're also connected to the big I, the higher perspective, our higher mind, God, Jah, whatever you want to call it. And that's something that I really resonate with, and try to embody in my work and my life as well. So yeah, it has many different layers to it, and yeah, probably more than that as well, to be honest, but those are the main ones for now.
Absolutely love it. It has so much meaning, and you can tell it means so much to you. And in a way, you had to go through all this to then create this beautiful idea, and you're now working for yourself and for I&I. So what achievements have you had with I&I so far?
So I feel like I've achieved quite a lot in the last few years since I've been working for myself at I&I. It's been a journey. I think working for yourself, becoming self-employed, is such a different mind state and way of life to being an employee in somebody else's company. And that's been a personal journey, a personal discovery, and I believe I've grown a lot personally through that process, becoming more confident, becoming more patient in terms of the ups and downs of work. You really have to face your emotions a lot more and get out of your comfort zone a little bit more when you're self-employed. So there's been a lot of personal growth over the last few years, but also in the work itself. I've continued to work with clients in the education sector, some really great clients, and doing a lot of great work, helping young people still, which I'm still really proud of, and I like doing that kind of work. I've worked with a number of small businesses on a coaching basis as well, which is something that I'm really interested in and doing more of now, which I've never really done before, starting I&I, but again, using my skills of insight and intuition on a one-to-one basis. That's been really interesting and really rewarding as well. And I got to do some work in the football sector as well, which was really fun for me, working with the FA, which was a really great client to work with. And yeah, really enjoyable for me as a football fan to do. So yeah, I've worked on some really great projects with some great people and grown myself along the way as well. So I'm really happy with what I've achieved over the last few years, but still feel that there's a long way to go. So yeah, still a baby in terms of this self-employment journey, and hopefully I&I can transform and grow much more still to come.
Yeah, I feel like you've only just started and you've done so much already, and like I can see it in your face lights up every time you're speaking about it, and I really feel that energy whenever we do talk about your work, and it's so different from before where it was just draining, whereas now I feel like it gives you energy. And that's the achievements of I&I, but how about any challenges that you may have come across whilst working for yourself?
Yeah, so like I say, I think the main challenges so far that I've experienced at least is really the personal challenges of being self-employed. Like I say, it's a very different mind state. When you're employed in somebody else's company, there's a certain degree of security and routine where you know that the job is going to be there, you're going to get the same salary at the end of every month, give or take. It might be more or less busy at times, but you can still be there pretty much the same hours and get the same pay. Obviously, when you're self-employed and in the nature of work that I do, sometimes I go through quiet periods where I don't have much work on. Sometimes I go through busy periods where I've got a lot of work on. I think for me, just adapting to that and learning to really trust myself has been a challenge, because it's a new situation and you really have to trust yourself and trust the universe and trust that you're doing the right thing. Because also working for yourself, I think you don't necessarily get the immediate validation or response as you do when you're working in a business with somebody else. You can kind of compare and see what everybody else is doing, and you get positive feedback from people on a daily basis. Whereas when you're working on your own, a lot of the work I might be doing work, on my content, on my coaching content, on my material that I might not even necessarily get an immediate kind of response or affirmation to. So it's really trusting myself and trusting that process. And yeah, I think I've learned a lot through that journey, just in terms of how I manage my time, manage my energy, and yeah, managing my emotions. And it brings up shadows, I suppose. It brings up difficulties, concerns, fears, which can be a little bit of a roller coaster at times. So yeah, those are the kind of challenges that I've experienced, and probably still will experience, but I think I've hopefully faced a lot and learned a lot already to make that easier now.
I feel like you have, and I feel like you deal with it really, really well. So well done for everything that you've achieved with I&I so far. What makes I&I different then to other insight providers?
So I would say what makes I&I different from other insight providers is the combination of different services. So I offer research, but I also offer coaching. Those two things don't necessarily go together too often in different companies and different providers. But also it's the combination of those two values that I mentioned of insight and intuition. So I go through insight and research in a meticulous way, like other research and insight providers do, in terms of designing, conducting and reporting insight on a thorough basis. But I do believe I have a special knack and intuition to see the truth and look into things on a deeper level, and particularly on the coaching basis to kind of reflect things to people and get people to think about things in a different way, to bring the best out of them and help them to unlock their potential, which is really what I'm trying to do with my coaching work at I&I. And also how I am really driven by my values, and that's something that I really emphasize in the work that I do, and help other people, other businesses to connect with their values, which I believe are really the key to success in a business and individually. I think in this modern world, everybody and businesses and individuals are also goal orientated, and we're often thinking about the future and trying to achieve and obtain certain things to obtain a potential happiness or peace or prosperity that we imagine will be associated with that thing in the future once we reach that goal or obtain that thing. When really what I try to do in my own work and my own life, and try to encourage other people to do as well, is to identify and live by and work according to your own values right now, which is to identify what's most important to you, and what really makes you happy on a day-to-day basis. And if you can do that on a day-to-day basis, then you are already successful. You don't have to think about anything in the future. Your success is right now by being true to yourself, enjoying yourself, doing the best work that you can, and whatever other values are significant and important to you. So that's the different perspective, I suppose, that I offer, is trying to instill and connect people with those values so that they can live and work according to their highest potential and in happiness from this moment onwards, really. That's really what I'm trying to accomplish.
And it's so beautiful, and I feel like you've really helped me along my way as well with my own business, and I am feeling joyful in my experience in my journey. Talking about values, what are the core values of I&I?
So the core values of I&I, which I have identified and work according to, are all beginning with I: independence, insight, intuition, integrity, and impact. So independence, I am an independent research provider. I work independently. I am a standalone person. I am a sole trader, a freelancer, whatever you want to call it. But really I'm looking for that independence in my life. I like to be in control of my life. And I like to encourage other people and other businesses to do the same as well. So I work with a lot of small businesses who are kind of starting out and to build their own independence, which is different from working for another company. When you're working for yourself, you really need to develop that independence of mind, independence of work, and achieve hopefully the financial abundance that will support that independence on the long run. So that's one of my core values. Insight, like I say, which is about collecting and processing and reporting information to the highest quality that I can. I always try to get the best information and present the most important information to my clients, and really enjoy that process of discovering that insight as well. That's something I've always enjoyed and been attracted to. Intuition, like I say, is kind of looking beneath the surface of things, looking deeper, trying to get at the underlying obstacles and motivations that drive personal behaviour. whether that's from a research perspective or a coaching perspective, and trusting my intuition as well on a day-to-day basis in the work that I'm doing, and encouraging other people to do likewise. Integrity is all about just being true to yourself, doing the best work that I can, trying to be honest with myself, being honest with others, being honest with my clients, not overstretching, doing what's right for me and right for the client in the moment, and being honest and authentic as much as possible. And then impact. My goal is to have a positive impact on the world, and going back to my previous jobs and things where maybe I've worked in the commercial sphere that didn't really resonate with me. I didn't really feel like I was having a real positive social impact. I've always wanted to have a positive impact, whether that's in education, working with young people, or helping to create positive change in whatever way. So I really want to work with clients and do work with clients who are of that similar mind state. We're not just being driven by money, but we're actually trying to do some positive in the world. So yeah, that's the positive impact that I value.
That's amazing. I love how you've got 5 eyes. How did that come about? How did you work that out?
So yeah, that was probably a little bit of trickiness and me being a little bit of a Virgo and trying to make it fit my brand and everything like that. But I did go through a real genuine exploration to identify those values. And I actually did an exercise which I actually do with my coaching clients as well, which is where you reflect, or I reflected in the case of myself, reflecting on what do I want from my business? What do I want from my work? What do I really value? What's really important to me? What do I want from my customers or clients? What impact do I want to have on the world? What legacy do I want to create? How do I want to change the world? And it's a reflective exercise of identifying what are the most important motivations and drivers for yourself, or myself in this case. And yeah, I did that exercise myself and identified what was most important to me. I think my initial draft was not necessarily those exact words, but I played around with it and tweaked it a little bit to fit the I and I and I and I and I. But yeah, those do really resonate with me, and those words, those values are really important to me. And when I just recited them, then that's not just me reciting off a piece of paper. That's what these words actually mean to me, and they are something that I think about on an ongoing basis. So yeah.
And you can tell as well, it does come from the heart, and yeah, it's so integral, and it's actually quite poetic as well. Hearing you speak about it, it's such an effective method, and thank you for sharing. So what's the long-term vision for I&I?
So my long-term vision for I&I sounds quite a broad one and quite a high one, but my vision is to help humanity towards its highest potential.
Ooh.
And I know that sounds grand, that might sound far-fetched, but it feels real to me, and it's something that I believe that I can do, and believe I am doing already, contributing towards that. I believe it's really important to have a vision, a long-term vision, as well as your values, which is why the tagline and a lot of the work that I&I do is around vision with values. My vision is about helping humanity towards its highest potential through the work that I do, working with these clients who are trying to create positive change in the world, whether that's through their creative talent, through education, through their passion, whatever business it is that they're trying to do to create some good in the world. And also by helping people to connect with their values, which, like I say, I think those are really the key to success, not in just the traditional materialistic sense of success, but in the actual inner truth of success and peace and happiness. I believe that if I connect with my values, if I live with my values and encourage other people to do so, then they will in turn act according to those values, their own values, and will achieve their success. And that's not materially driven, it's, like I say, following their passion, following their creativity, creating positive change in the world. And I believe that the more people can do that, that's going to have a ripple effect, and that can potentially change the world. So yeah, that's a long-term vision that I have, is to help humanity towards its highest potential.
And what a beautiful mission and vision that is. So fire. So I think what's really good about finding out your core values, not only does it help you in your work, but it actually helps you in your actual daily life as well, and actually recognizing who you are. So if you could speak on a little bit more of that and how you see that reflects in your own daily life, that might be useful for people to hear.
Yeah, definitely. So like I say, I think that there is a general paradigm and a way in which we've almost been programmed to live in this modern Western society, at least, which is very much goal orientated, often financially motivated, driven to achieve certain successes, achieve certain external goals, external standards. And those things can provide happiness if they really align with your personal values, but sometimes they don't. And I think we've all at different times in our life found ourselves in places and times where we've been doing things because we thought it was the best thing to do. We were in that job, or we took that job, or we studied that subject at university, or even, we're in a relationship or in a friendship, or dress a certain way, or whatever it may be. All these different ways in which people mold themselves and try to fit in with the outside world and get some external kind of validation. But those things can actually lead us astray if they're not really what we authentically want. So exploring and identifying your real personal values is about understanding what's really most important to you. And the value of values is that the value of life is never really found in the future. It's never really found in those things that we may be chasing. Happiness and contentment and peace can only ever really be found in the present moment. So it's by identifying what's really important to you on a day-to-day basis, on what that's most important, really allows you to prioritize those things. So, if your health is really important to you, then you should, take as much time as you feel is necessary to look after your health, whether that's the way that you eat in, the way that you're exercising, or whatever the case may be. And we all have different kind of measures and methods for approaching that. Similarly, peace of mind. If we're somebody who has a tendency to get stressed out and we don't really like ourselves when we're in that state, and we want to be in a peaceful state of mind, then we can build our day to create peace by giving ourselves time and space and meditation to do so. If your family or your friends are really, really important to you, then you should try to create a life that allows you to spend the time that you want to with them. And yeah, like I say, unfortunately, this modern world, the 9-to-5 lifestyle, the commercial rat race, can often limit us and restrict us from all of those things. And so the more that we can connect with those things, the more that we find that happiness on a day-to-day basis. And that really also opens up the space, and it connects with that intuition, like I say as well, because it's the intuition that really guides us to know what's best for ourselves. And if we can create time and space and tap into that, then we allow ourselves to give ourselves what we need on an ongoing basis. And in my experience, over the last few years of working for myself, like I said, in my previous job, I was working stupid hours a lot of the time. I didn't have time to do very much else. My life was really dominated by my work. Whereas now, obviously my work is still important to me, but it's more of a natural expression of who I am. It's not something I'm forcing myself to do at a particular time. So I can now, working for myself, be a lot more free with my time. I can still work and I can still put in long hours when I want to or when I need to, depending on what's going on. I've still got that capability, I've still got that focus when I need to, when I want to. But, you know, I don't have to get up at the same time every day. My days can be different. I can follow my creative flow, my intuition. You know, if I'm feeling more creative one day, I might want to do some writing and create some content. Or if I'm feeling, you know, I want to get into the detail, then I'm going to get into the numbers and do that research project that I'm working on, or whatever the case may be. And, you know, if I want to go for a walk in the middle of the day, or, you know, sometimes I'm just feeling tired, or I don't really want to work too much today, you know, I can take some time out, we can do different things, and that's something that you and I have both benefited from over the last few years, having that freedom. And yeah, it's really been transformative, I think, for me, and it's something that I do recommend for everybody. If you can do, you know, if you can find something that you can do for yourself, working independently, provide a service to others, but also one that aligns with your own values, to give yourself that freedom. And yeah, since then, I think that we've been able to spend more quality time together on an ongoing basis as a couple. I've been able to do more work, positive work for my community that I'm a part of as well. Big up Soul Moon. Working on my book, Liberty Farm, as well. Learning an instrument, learning ukulele. I've never learned an instrument before in my life, but I have over the last few years. That's something that I probably would have never had the time or inclination to do if I was still in a 9-to-5 job. So yeah, those are just some examples of ways in which this has benefited me, and hopefully I think can benefit other people. And like I say, that isn't to be prescriptive. Everybody has their own different, unique approach to life. Some people love to work 10, 12 hours a day, and they can do that, and that's absolutely great. And if you can do that and that makes you happy, then go for it. If you can't, if you've got a different way of life, then, you know, find that way of life. And yeah, it's about tapping into yourself, tapping into your intuition, finding your values, following those, and from that place, yeah, everything just becomes more open and free and easier in your day-to-day life.
Wow, what a free and abundant life you have, Dee. Can I have some of that?
We do have a very free and abundant life, and yeah, I think you do have plenty of that. And as I've said as well before, you're a big inspiration for me in that regard, because while I say intuition is important to me, I do still have a tendency to, you know, get stuck in my left brain and be a bit too methodical and orderly at times and trying to achieve certain goals. It's something that I'm learning to relax and go with the flow a little bit more. But I think that you definitely are somebody that goes with the flow and follows your creative passion, and you've given me a lot of inspiration in that regard. And yeah, we do have a lot of abundance in our life and a lot of freedom. So yeah, I really do appreciate that.
I bring the feminine to your masculine.
Definitely.
So talking about intuition, what helps you tap into your intuition?
So I think probably the most important thing that I can think of right now in terms of tapping into intuition is time. Just giving yourself time. Don't rush. When you rush, you escape the moment. You are no longer present. You're chasing things in the future once again. And, you know, sometimes it's good to have structure. I like to have structure a lot of the time. That's loosened up a lot recently. But, you know, sometimes it's good to have some structure in your life. But I would always say, you know, don't rush to open the laptop or the phone first thing in the morning. Give yourself some time in the morning. I personally, you know, like to do some yoga, do some exercise. Meditation doesn't necessarily come naturally to me, but yoga is a form of meditation for me. I also get in the cold tub in the morning, in the garden, which is nice for me. I also like cooking, funnily enough, to give myself a little bit of time, just to allow myself to get into that flow. And I think it's something that comes with practice, is checking in with yourself on an ongoing basis to see how you're feeling from moment to moment. And if you feel like you're forcing yourself, or there's a bit of tension or resistance to what you're doing, then use that as a prompt just to soften and tap into yourself and ask yourself, okay, oh, what do I actually need in this moment? Like, am I forcing myself to do this thing? Maybe I should take a little bit of a break. Maybe I should do this other thing instead. Or maybe it's just asking questions to yourself and to the universe. You know, what would be most important to me today? How can I best be of service today? What lights me up today? What's going to bring me the most joy today? Asking yourself questions and feeling them in your heart and in yourself, to know this is what I should do right now, or this is what I should do right now. And yeah, just going easier on yourself, I think is really important. And this all comes with practice. It doesn't necessarily come easy all the time, but the more that you practice it, the more you'll get that feeling. It's a subtle feeling to tell you what's right or wrong for you in a given moment, according to your intuition.
And yeah, by following your intuition, you can actually understand it more, and it'll guide your way, like you say. And there is a difference between resistance and challenges. For example, talking about the cold tub, that for me is a massive challenge. Like, I hate being cold, you know that. But for you, you took it in your stride and be able to do it each morning. So there is a little resistance there, isn't there, before you go in. But by going in, you actually be able to soften as well. So do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the cold tub is something that's interesting that I've used on and off for the last few years, but I've been getting into quite regularly recently, mostly first thing in the morning, which has been quite a challenge, like you say, particularly during these cold winter months. But I think it's a really useful thing for me. It does have a lot of physical benefits in terms of your cardiovascular system and your nervous response and things like this. But I think for me, the main benefit is mental. And yes, it is a challenge, but it's a challenge that you're putting yourself in willingly. And I think that's the key. When we find ourselves in stressful situations in life where, you know, it's out of our control, or we're doing something that we don't want to do, then that can be quite a challenge and a stress, in a negative sense, on the body and on the mind. But when we put ourselves deliberately, willingly in situations that we're choosing that are a little bit uncomfortable, but we know that there's a benefit to, I think that develops a strength of mind in a way. It kind of allows me to do something that's a little bit uncomfortable, to get outside of my comfort zone first thing in the morning, which makes the rest of the day feel a little bit easier. And yeah, there's a kind of a natural response when you get in that freezing cold water, that your body, you know, shuts down and screams out almost to tell you to get out. This is cold, this is uncomfortable, this is not natural. But sitting in that water, you actually release that resistance, and you get a real sense of peace and tranquility and kind of a confidence that comes from being able to sit in an uncomfortable situation. And I think that those kind of qualities can benefit you through day-to-day life and benefit me, like I say, giving you confidence to get out of your comfort zone and do something that's a little bit uncomfortable. And also, yeah, having that practice of feeling your nervous system, feeling your body's response to a stressor, and being able to comfort yourself, control yourself, release resistance. That probably does actually help, like, tap into your intuition in a sense, because it tunes you into your body and your mind's response to things, so that then, you know, on a day-to-day basis, you know, if I'm stressed out about something, or, you know, whatever obstacle, whatever challenge is coming up, maybe a shadow in my own mind is coming up, I can sense that maybe a little bit more clearer than I would do without it. So yeah, that's something that's really benefited from me, and I would recommend, yeah, getting in the cold tub for people if you can give it a try.
In a way, it's like a meditation, isn't it? And meditation doesn't have to be sitting down, having your eyes closed in quiet. This is a big meditation for you, because you're able to release whatever emotions or blockages in your system, to be able to relax and then be able to go on your day in ease and peace, which is such a beautiful thing. And I've seen that in you since you've been doing this as well. So yeah, it's such a powerful tool.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm glad you've noticed the benefits that it's brought to me as well. But yeah, like I say, it may not be for everybody, and it depends, you know, if that's something that you're attracted to. I know that you really struggle with the cold. I was speaking to one of my friends the other day, who's from Brazil, and I was telling him about it, and he was like, no way, like he can't do the cold either. But, you know, he's doing lots of other things that are uncomfortable, and, you know, he's managing his stress in different ways, and likewise for yourself. So yeah, it's whatever works for different people.
Exactly,
But it's an
yeah.
idea, yeah.
Yeah, and if you resonate with it and if it works for you, then keep going. If it doesn't resonate, then obviously it's not for you. And there's so many other tools out there. For me, it's a sauna.
Yeah, I do like the sauna as well, to be fair. That's different, yeah. Maybe, I was going to say maybe that's not so uncomfortable, but it can get uncomfortable after a while. But yeah, sauna's good too. Yeah, I do like a sauna as well.
The yin and yang.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode of I&I Interviews so far. If you are and you'd like to continue to watch, I'd ask you to do just one small favour. Go to my website, go to iandinsight.com/community and join my I&I community mailing list to get immediate access to the second part of this video. Here's a glimpse of what's still to come.
I was doing well and I was earning a bit of money, but in my home life I was still very much a student, really not taking care of myself, not taking care of the house, kind of echoing, I realised, maybe some similar patterns to my dad at that time, realising that you're in a place in life that you don't want to be. I had a change of a spiritual perspective as well, and yeah, I really kind of started to see the world from more of a spiritual and dreamlike perspective from there on. Wow, that is a different question. Very juicy.